This program is suitable for general viewing.
Assalamu alaikum wa rahmatullahi wa barakatuh, and a very good evening. My name is Faisal Kassim and welcome to Live Roll Talk, exactly 20 minutes past 8 o'clock right here in Jamia Masjid. Some people call it the Haram of Nairobi or Kenya. There is no planet B, that's what we're talking about. We only have one planet and it is our responsibility to take care of it. Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala, when creating the mankind and our father Adam alayhi salam, he spoke to the angel. He said that he wants to create a Khalifa, right? And the angel said, why would you want to create someone who would shed blood and cause fasad on this earth? But Allah said, I know what you guys do not know. So we have been created to be the vicegerents of Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala on this earth. It is your responsibility and my responsibility to take care of our environment. From the 4th of this month to the 6th of this month, African president, at least 20 of them together with other dignitaries from the civil society, United Nations agencies, private sector, among us many other partners, local communities, farm organizations, children, youth, women, academia, gathered in Nairobi at the Kenya International Conventional Center to discuss matters climate. And thus, the whole of this week, we have been commemorating the whole agenda about climate. And joining me tonight in the studio, I have Amina Hirsi, who is the CEO of Jumbo Tree, Kenya. Karibu sana, madam. Assalamu alaikum.
Wa alaikum salam.
And of course, she is accompanied by Hanifa Adan, who is an environmental activist. Karibu sana.
Thank you.
Ladies, I mean, it's a ladies' affair tonight. I'm the only gentleman, of course, representing you back there at home, talking about matters climate. Starting with you, I mean, 4th to 6th of this month, September 2023, leaders met at the KICC to discuss matters climate. You took part. What is your overview? What is your general feedback of the event before we delve into the topic?
Bismillah ar-Rahman ar-Rahim. It was exciting. It's an honor as a Kenyan to witness that, and it was an honor that we as a country got to host the first ever Africa Climate Summit. I mean, I've been to a lot of events at KICC. I've not seen anything like it. There was thousands of people from all over the world. It was well attended with a lot of dignitaries, as you say. There was a lot of heads of state. There was the biggest thing that came out of it was the Nairobi Declaration, which had some very key points. And generally, I think, yes, there were some missed opportunities, but I think it went well. And for me, the biggest thing that it did, it created that climate change awareness right to the grassroots levels, because there was a lot of media attention. It was well covered all over the world, and even the local media. So I think for me, one of the biggest take-homes is it brought to light the severity of climate change and that there needs to be immediate action.
Thank you. Thanks so much. Hanifa Adan, you followed the event as well, and I mean, you took part directly or indirectly to this event. Like, what is your feedback on the whole event in general?
Thank you. I'd like to be as realistic and as genuine as I can with my answer. So my take from the climate summit, first of all, is I commend the head of states for trying to come up with solutions to counter the climate crisis. But
there's always a but.
Yeah, there's a but, I'm sorry. There's a but to this entire climate summit. So basically the climate summit, the African Climate Summit, consisted of the head of states amplifying their usual argument. The usual argument here being the climate finance. Okay? Each and every event we have of the climate summit, it's always overshadowed by the climate finance talks. It's always the head of states whining, if I may use that word, about the climate finance. So it's really just...
So the change is always married or integrated
all
with
the other
finance.
summits.
But again, how do you change the climate without the financial resources?
Yes, actually, you cannot talk about climate crisis solutions without the climate finance, okay? But how do we always have to... Okay, the talks on the climate solutions, okay, are overshadowed by the climate finance talks. So actually there are no solid sustainable solutions at all that are in, you know, plans and projects compared to the talks. I can't insist on this enough. Okay. If there's one thing people take from the climate summit, it's always the climate finance funds and everything.
Interesting.
Yeah, so that's my overall...
Yeah, sure. Go ahead.
Yes, that's my overall take on the climate summit.
Thank you. Let's delve into some of the CTAs, the call to actions, right? And there is an approximate 35, I think, if I'm not wrong. It's a 35-point agenda as a call to action after this. Yes, actually, that is 38. It's a 38-point call to action agenda after the 3-day summit, the heads of state and the UN and the embassies and all that. One of them is to reduce global emissions by at least 45% in the next 10 years. Amina, you are the champion and CEO of Jumbo Tree, championing planting of trees and all that. How practical is this?
I think if we now go back to where did that come from, that came from the Paris Agreement in 2015 in one of the COPs, where the agreement stipulated that, and it was actually signed by the parties, that they will endeavor to cut global emissions by 45% by 2030 and go to net zero by 2050. What net zero means is the CO2 that you're emitting is almost the same as the CO2 that you're sinking. And also, I mean, what it said is that they endeavor to keep the global warming to 2 degrees pre-industrial era and limited to 1.5. I think it's not realistic. If you understand sort of the whole the global carbon budget, for instance, just to sort of give you a synopsis of how things are, is we've got a global carbon budget of about 250 gigatons.
Yes.
Annually, the whole world, we're emitting about 35 gigatons. So, 5 to 6 years, that means we've actually run out of our global carbon budget. So we are nowhere near the 45% because we are emitting more. And to go back to the Africa Summit, I mean, yes, I was very happy that they talked about the global decarbonization, which is, and it's stipulated that they need to have a global carbon tax. Right now, as things stand, there's only about 24 countries that have a global carbon tax. So that was a good thing. The other thing that came out of it that was very positive also was the restructuring of the financial borrowing system, which Africa now, we pay 5 to 8 times more. So that was a good thing. And, with Germany coming in to actually, the 60 million debt that we have with them, and they said, you can actually pay back through sustainable and renewable energy, sustainable agriculture and renewable energy. But I think for me what came out of it was what was missing, the missed opportunities. I think everything geared towards decarbonization, and actually we were looking at mitigation rather than adaptation, and as Africa, we only emit 4% of the total global CO2. So for us, mitigation is not a big thing. It's actually for the global north, us as the global south, because unfortunately, because of where Africa is geographically, and also because of lack of infrastructure, we are the ones who bear the brunt of the rising global temperature. So I think for me the missed opportunity was we needed to focus more on adaptation. which means, you know, that we needed, and I mean, back to climate finance, without money, nothing can happen. You know, for instance, if we are to gear up as Africa to make sure that our climate resilience and adaptation, we need to invest more in sustainable agricultural practices, such as crop resistant and drought resistant. We need to better water management in terms of rainwater harvesting, and also, you know, the risks of rising sea levels. So I think the African leaders should have pushed more towards adaptation. This is what we need, because you know, decarbonization, we are emitting only 4%, you know, so that is something that was going to favor the global north.
Together, just within the first question that I asked you, how do you juxtapose it, like all about adaptation and all about conservation of our greenlands and the savannas and all that? How do you juxtapose it against the directive of lifting the bans on logging just few months back, after 6 years back? How do you achieve? How do you square the circle?
You know, my business is growing trees, so anyone that, you know, anything to do with cutting trees, I frown upon. But I do understand, again, you know, if we do need timber, we have to be very realistic. We need timber, but then how do you then, you know, counter that by growing, you know, for every one tree that you grow, you cut down, you need to grow about 10 of them. So everything has to have this very cautious balance.
Less than 50% is used on timber, by the way, of the logging. Less than 50% is used on timber.
The biggest thing is charcoal.
Exactly.
And that's why we need more renewable energy sources, you know, and sort of to drive. I mean, one of the biggest thing is, you know, with climate change, we need to drive away from fossil fuel, you know, which is the coal, charcoal, and oil and gas.
And the carbonization tax comes in.
Yeah, I mean, the decarbonization tax was really, you know, they are talking about maritime aviation. So not really us, because we only emit 4%, very little, but they're going for, I mean, for me, it's just another way of taxing, and it's the West looking at how can we put more money in our coffers because they're going empty.
And recoup. And you were reacting and nodding when you were talking about matters to do with deforestation and devegetation.
In regards to how practical that is, you know, the president, His Excellency Ruto, is a climate champion outside there, you know. But why is our climate champion lifting the ban on logging, a 6-year ban on logging? We are not going to be practical, to be honest. So that's very unrealistic. And I'm going to bring in Dandora Dam site. You know, with the existence of Dandora Dam site, we are going nowhere in countering climate change crisis. Dandora Dam site is the Kenyan's bedroom garbage. It's a place, a very sad place actually. When African head of states complain to richer nation on how they're left behind when it comes to climate finances, I find it ironical and very comical, because that's exactly what they're doing to their people back home, you know. So an 8-year-old in middle class and upper class, you know, lives a very different life from an 8-year-old in the slums. So why is Nairobi's biggest dam site in the slums? Why is an 8-year-old kid in Dandora Dam site, you know, walking barefoot, scavenging, you know, and in a place that's emitting toxic substances like lead and mercury? Why are you letting an 8-year-old live that kind of life and then complain outside to richer nation how they're leaving Africa behind? So it's really ironical. Why do we not start with the man in the mirror? Why are we complaining of Africa being looked down upon when you're doing the same to your people? Why? So we are very far. Actually, let's talk about the electric buses. That's something I highly commend. I will not discredit the electric buses because I'm a fan of it. Actually, the Embasava Sako, to be specific, the Basigo, I love Basigo and will wait for it instead of the normal Matatu. It's everything we need in the future. I love it. But the parading of the electric buses 2 days ago in town was nice. I recommend that. The parading of the electric buses was a bit unrealistic because it's one in two in circles. You know, you will not find it on a normal day. You will not find so many electric buses in town. So let's just be realistic. So it will be really amazing, you know, with the $23 billion commitments at the summit, you know, with goodwill from people and good governance. We can achieve these things, you know, but it will always start from the people at the top. You lead us. You lead us into this disaster or into a beautiful outcome. So it's really genuinely up to these people.
Wow, I love the way you really contextualize the whole climate summit and some of the get-goes, some of the wins to the actual life of the Monenchi on the ground. I mean, that is very commendable. But again, another thing, African urban startups are going to be homes to at least 1 billion people, estimated, of course, by 2050. And thus begs the question, are we focusing on the wrong agenda here as Africa? When we brought in leaders and spent millions of shillings in hosting the whole climate change and to talk about the whole climate change, with the effects and the severity that it comes with, forgetting some of these perennial problems that we've been having, like floods, like drought and all these things. So are we really looking at things in the wrong way instead of focusing on, for example, urbanization, urban poverty, to mention but a few? I want you to hold your thoughts, think about that, because we need to pay our bills and we're going to be back. Please do not touch that dial. I want to know about what I just asked a few minutes ago. What about you? Do you really want to get information about that? Don't touch that dial.
Horizon TV, the beacon for the nation.
The best gift you can give to your kids is education. Baitul Hikmah Integrated Group of Schools is a faith-based international school that offers an Islamic integrated British curriculum. We provide quality education to our students while instilling Islamic morals, values and practices. Our curriculum includes Cambridge IGCSE, digital learning, modern languages and Islamic integrated studies steered by a qualified and experienced TSC registered tutors. We offer a secure and serene learning environment that promotes development of knowledge, skills, understanding, confidence and creativity to our students. To strike a balance, we have an ample playground for the children and strong extracurricular activities. The school has a mosque and madrasa for the students' spiritual upliftment. We're located at 6 Parklands Avenue off City Park Drive, opposite Regal Plaza on Tazza Lane. September 2023 intake is ongoing. For more information, contact us on 0732 854 647, info@baitulhikmah.sc.ke or www.baitulhikmah.sc.ke. Baitul Hikmah, a home of wisdom.
Horizon TV, the beacon for the nation.
Assalamu alaikum and welcome back. Thank you so much for keeping it live, Real Talk. We are talking about matters climate against the backdrop of the recent Africa Climate Summit that it's actually going on. It's just the head of state that have left. Most of them have left this morning, others last night. But again, the summit is still ongoing at the KICC, Kenyatta International Conventional Center. It's still ongoing. You can go and take part if you're registered, of course, and you can check out their materials online, look at some of the wins, look at some of the progress that we have made as a continent. And the question I'm still asking, the urban centers in this continent by 2050 estimate to at least host 1 billion people. Right now, the general population in Africa, we are slightly above 1.4 billion people all over Africa. And the question, as Kenya, for example, we are just barely 60 years old. We are looking or competing or working with countries that are at least 100 years, 200 years of independence. And the question comes in, are we looking at this thing the wrong way? Are we focusing on the wrong problems? Are we looking at the right problems but in the wrong way, right? Is climate change really a priority for us as a country and as a continent? Amina, let's start with you.
Yeah. I think coming back to, for me, as I said, the missed opportunities, you know, with the African leaders there, I think they should have taken advantage. They speak for 1.3 billion of us in Africa. And I think they were swayed in coming up with a Nairobi declaration that, for me, I think pushed more of the global north agenda, the West, more about decarbonization. Faisal, if you come to my house and trash my house, I'm going to demand you to clean it up. I'm not going to beg you. I'm going to demand you. Now, we all live in planet A. There's no planet B. Yeah. We know who are the emitters, but we are the ones who are bearing the brunt. So, for instance, yes, you know, the whole world, you know, we have heat waves, but for someone in the West, they can just put on the air conditioning. You know, if in terms of floods, they have all these flood barriers. In terms of
drought,
drought. They have drought resistant. Yeah, you know. So again, as I said, it's back to adaptation and resilience, and we are already facing it. So we need to demand that you've put us in this problem, and you need to enable us to be climate resilience. Again, it goes back to the money. And for instance, you know, right from 15 years ago with the COP21, I think, in Copenhagen, I mean, they pledged $100 billion to help us fight this, but you know, it's nowhere near that. You know, they say it's something like, I don't know, X amount, 18 billion. Where's the transparency? How did you spend that? So I think the focus should be more on polluters pay. You have put us in this trouble, and we demand that you pay. I think as Africa, we are the cradle of mankind, and I believe the future, with 40% resources of renewable energy. Yes, and I think for me, one thing that I really want to bring home to people is, with all this money, with the UAE, $400 million, with, you know, all these are investments. They're not funds. These people are investing in renewable energy, in green projects, because they know that they'll get their money back. So it's not about, So for instance, with the green hydrogen that they're doing, it's going to be piped back to the West. So is it something that's really benefiting us as Africans? So we need to really take a microscope and really look at what are we agreeing, what are we signing up to?
Guess the shocking bit, you say at least here Africa, we are at least producing 40% of the world's energy renewable resources. Yeah, I mean, with solar, you know how much we're getting in return? Only $60 billion out of the $3 trillion that is coming from it. Yeah.
I mean, the numbers are shocking, you know, and for me, I always say polluters pays. You come to my house, you mess it up, you have to pay for it. So I think for me, I wished I saw a more sort of united front that, you know, this is it, we are done. And, you know, for instance, don't let them come to invest until they've done X, Y, Z. Why are we opening our doors to the West without having all these stipulations and you've got to do this? So unfortunately, it was a missed opportunity.
Is it time maybe we're going to high drive on matters to do with activism on social media about holding these people accountable?
Yes, I really believe in holding your leaders accountable. No one, especially in the slums, deserves to live in such a pathetic environment? I'm sorry, okay? Why is every waste generated in Kenya's high-end, posh neighborhood dumped in the slums? We're actually looking at this climate change thing really differently. So if you're talking about climate change solutions, let's start with the real problems on ground, okay? Like Ruto said, Sakaja is going to lead Dandora being turned into a waste-to-energy power. That is yet to be heard of. That's part of, you know, the biggest issue we can discuss when it comes to climate change. I really like to stick with issues on the ground affecting real people. You know, the entire talk of gas emission, the greenhouse gas emission, that is also part of the solution.
Yeah.
But there's really much we can do rather than hold summits, millions wasting money, you know. Why are we not offering or doing anything but keep whining to the West? You know, why are you whining when you haven't done anything in your country? That's my entire...
Interesting.
Yeah.
I mean, you see, I've realized something with all these COPs, like the COPs and the Ocean Conference and the UNGAs and many other conferences that take place, and the climate change or any other sensitive topic is part of the agenda. It's always referring back to a particular declaration, like, for example, the COP26 in Egypt, and like the Copenhagen that you just mentioned, the Paris declaration. Right now we have the Nairobi declaration. So we always have these declarations, always have these declarations that always refer back to. I mean, 40% of the Nairobi declaration is all about operationalization of a particular declaration or commitment, right?
Yes.
40% of this, right? We always refer back to that. So it's all about commitment and commitment and commitment. Very little action.
No, absolutely.
Come back to us as the Wananchi, so they say, as the Wanjiku, as the Aminas and Faisals, the Hanifas on the ground. What can we do or should we do different? Because if you talk about, for example, the emissions, if you talk about the effect of the climate change, we feel it the most.
Absolutely.
Right? Some of these leaders who sat at the conference for the 3 days, they can always take a flight and move to another country. They can always make their environment more comfortable. Put on the AC, right? Kienda kwa gari, put on the AC, right? But again, we on the other side, down here, we are facing these challenges head on. We have to adapt, we have to be resilient here for us to survive. So then, what options do we have? What can we do?
Yeah, I mean, it's strange, it's very true, Paris Agreement, and before it started from the Kyoto protocol and what have you, and it's true, we have very flowery agreements and protocols, and it's the implementation that's not really happening. But then I look at it at three levels. You know, the state level as Africa, unfortunately, it's only about 4 countries that have climate change acts. It's just Uganda, Nigeria, I think Ethiopia and Kenya. So I think as Africa as a whole, other countries need those policies in place. And also at sort of private sector, I think there should be more incentives for green projects, and also at the state level. But then I think fundamentally it comes down to your individual level. And I always like to tie this back to faith and environment. And when you understand your deen, Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala, as you correctly say, it says we are khalifas of the earth. What a khalifa means is a custodian, rather than sort of the West sort of pushes this thing of we have dominion of the earth. We don't. Once you understand the whole biodiversity ecosystem, you realize that the plants and animals and you know, right from the little worm, we all depend on each other through the carbon cycle and what have you. So I think if you do it from an Islamic perspective and understand that Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala has told me I need to take care of this earth. And also, you know, one of the ayahs that comes to mind is when Allah says they bring about destruction with their own hands. Because the climate change, we've entered a new geological era called the Anthropocene. From the Greek word anthro means human. All this is human induced. All this is about consumption. yani ulafi umezidi, we want more, you know. We want fancier cars, we want fancier clothes, we want more. And that means there needs to be more production. So I think it should be a balance. As a green economist, I always say a balance between sustainable consumption, which leads to sustainable production. So you as an individual, you know, again, back to your deen, we've been told, I mean, Islam is a beautiful religion that has all these things. Do not waste, do not kill animals, grow trees. I mean, trees are, you know, you're told if you hear the trumpet of the last day and you've got a sapling in your hand, you know, you need to grow it. So I think if we come from that aspect of, you know what, I'm taking care of the earth and Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala has put me here and I've got a purpose, come from that. And then what can you do? That's when you look at yourself and say, what is my CO2 footprint? You know, and then you look at my consumption. You know, it's very funny that, you know, again, as Africa, we say, you know, we have very little emissions, but I think they're really looking at maybe the person in the mashinani, the rural, because, you know, for instance, they say each Kenyan, we produce about 0.44 tons of CO2. Right, as opposed to the American who emits 15, is it 15? Yeah, 15 tons. But then if you look at, you know, everything that you consume comes from, a lot of what we consume comes from China. Yes, because we are not producing it here, but this pen, these shoes, this furniture is coming from somewhere else. So it has a carbon footprint. So really asking yourself, do I need this? You know, so and, you know, reuse, recycle and reduce. And then you also look at issues of transport system. Rather than, you know, driving, can I walk? Again, you're reducing your footprints. In terms of wasting and your waste management, are you throwing less? Are you consuming more? So really looking at an individual level, renewable energy, for instance, if you can use bulbs that, you know, last longer, energy consumption. Yeah. So really looking at that level of what am I doing, what little am I doing to reduce the CO2 emissions, and what is my carbon footprint, and how am I offsetting that? So for instance, because you know you're emitting carbon, you need to think about carbon sinks, for instance. So am I growing enough trees so that I can sink my carbon, you know? So really looking at that at an individual level, again, back to your consumption. Do I need this? Do I need to buy this? Can I have one instead of two?
Do I need or do I want?
Yeah.
Interesting. Wow. Thank you. Hanifa?
I'll speak on the environmental aspect of what we can do as Kenyans, as our Njiku. Well, apart from holding the leaders accountable, we also have a group. Okay, I'll start by saying that Kenyans have a really deeply rooted bad culture of littering and dumping everywhere. I will not excuse that actually, because when we had a cleanup just recently in Pipeline, and people were just throwing trash when we were in the middle of cleaning. So just have a diaper just thrown in front of you. Yes, that's how bad it was. It's actually really sad. That's how badly our dumping culture is. So as what we can do as citizens, we sensitize people on littering. We offer, you know, lessons and ideas, thoughts on littering. We also install bins. Well, one of the weaknesses in Nairobi waste management plans is bins. Nairobi lacks proper waste disposal. I will not miss a chance to say that. Any chance I get, I will always mention how Nairobi lacks proper waste disposal system. And you cannot talk about mitigating climate problems without proper waste management and disposal. Nairobi is really far from it. So as part of what we can do, we install bins, sensitize the community, and also hold cleanups. We are moving on to our third project, which includes, it's more basically about urban poverty. You know, we focused on such places which are abandoned, and you should see the kids' faces when they see the bins. That's how deprived we are. That's how deprived we are in terms of waste management. So I believe we can do better. And I really believe that Sakaja can really pull this off. So we clean the place, And that's a bad road has been impassable for 30 years, and a raw sewer also. So that's a disaster cooking, and it's only Sakaja that can fix the road. So I can say I did my part. So please, if you want, do your part as you have countlessly promised. So that's the only solution, because if you have a road there, a tarmac road, I don't think anyone in their right senses would just dump on the road. As long as we have that place as it is, it will always remain as a dump site. Actually, it went back to how it was. So that means...
We're talking about pipeline, Amadandora?
Pipeline.
Pipeline, okay.
Yeah, we cleaned the pipeline. It's a terrible road. I think it's a famous road that many journalists have highlighted.
So how effective is your sensitization campaign? Because, I mean, one of the things here, point 35 is strengthening early warning systems and climate information services, as well as taking early action to protect lives, livelihoods, assets, and inform long-term decision-making related to climate change risk. And while I was reading through, I was just thinking to myself, so there is no place you will go and see a sign that you're not allowed to litter, but you'll find one or two things dumped around that place, right? The proverbial, usikojoe hapa, and then you see someone literally going to the same place, right? Do not dump here, but someone goes there, exact same spot. You said that you cleared that place, you did a cleanup, but again, right now it has gone back to how it was. And that begs the question.
Yeah.
So how effective is your sensitization?
I'm going to say that Kenyans do not listen unless the law is involved, okay? This matter has reached a place where it's beyond me now. No. And I repeat, just like the first campaign we had for a place that raw sewer, just right outside a level 5 hospital and opposite a school, which Sakaja fixed, okay? It used to be a dumping place, but now it's been cleared and fixed by Sakaja, and no one, absolutely no one dumps there. So they all went out of their comfort, you know. And we are an overtaxed, sad nation. So you cannot go to someone and tell them, you know, stop dumping here. So he'll think about what to eat next. That's not an excuse. It's not an excuse, but you really need law enforcement for these things to work more effectively.
I think what would work more effectively, I'm not really for a nanny state, you know, where laws, I think it goes back to education, and it starts from the home. If you teach your children, and I'm speaking to the women and the mothers, and just to sort of digress, it was very unfortunate that in this declaration I did not see anything about the role of women in Africa, because usually women suffer more. For instance, in Northeastern, when there's a drought, the men all run to the cities, and it's the women who are left, you know, looking for the water and what have you. So it goes back to the home and the mothers, and I said you need to start teaching the kids at home, do not litter. Allah said, you know, do not waste. You know, the Prophet ﷺ quotes the hadith and teach them that it's part of their faith. And I think once we start that, then we'll have a generation that respects and knows that I cannot litter, I cannot waste, I cannot do this. So I think back to the mothers at home, and I think individually what we can do to combat, the little thing that you can do to combat climate change is actually start teaching your children how to use less, to waste less, to consume less, sorry.
15 billion trees by 2032 is what you are planning to do, right? And in the breath or in the spirit of inculcating this to our next generation, how then do you ensure that you come up with a sustainable narrative that even the kids who are now, who are growing up, the teenagers and the young kids who are being taught by their mothers, our education system, how do you inculcate all these things about planting trees and the importance of saving our environment and having a proper climate can be greatly impacted by, you know, growing trees? How do you inculcate that?
I think first the 15 billion trees is actually His Excellency the President's mission. By 2030, he wants to do that.
But you guys have taken it up, and you're...
Yeah, I mean, we are supporting that. But then again, realistically, it's not going to be done. There's no government land for that. We are trying to increase the forest cover to about 13%. it has to be done privately by private landowners, and that's what we're doing. And back to, I think, the whole thing about planting trees and how it's teaching people what do trees do. So if somebody understands that it sequesters carbon, it sinks carbon. You know, we know trees give out oxygen and it absorbs the carbon. So I think first teaching the importance of trees and how it actually you know, combats climate change by actually absorbing the CO2, which means the greenhouse effect is affected. So I think understanding what trees do and also getting involved as families, as you know, plant tree in the memory of whoever, plant tree for yourself, because it's a sunnah, and we know that any bird that shades and any whatever comes from it, and I mean even simple as someone sitting under the shade, you get hasanat from it. So yeah, I mean you can be part of initiatives like Jumbo Tree. We are planting trees, and we are making sure that whatever donation or whatever people that are giving, I want you to plant for me 1,000 trees, 500 trees, 2 trees, 5 trees, whatever it is that you request, we make sure that we take it now to private landowners and farmers and make sure that you know, we support them in the self-care and how to take care of a tree and what have you. So again, it's back to making it more of a family, a sort of a family activity.
How do you take part in the planting of trees?
You can go to our website, jumbotreekenya.com. There'll be information there, so www.jumbotreekenya.com, and you'll see information on how you can buy trees, and we then donate them to farmers on your behalf. You can pay via credit card or our till number, and you know, you can send us an email, you can talk to us, and you know, as part of a CSR, if you want to do it as a company, if you want to do it as a family, if you want to do it, and you know, as Muslims, we understand the importance that this person is doing it as an act of ibadah. So we'll have to make sure that it's actually something that is delivered.
88202110. That is the till number if you want to plant trees through Jumbo Tree Limited. I checked their website already. I mean, it was part of my research. I checked their website. I mean, and they're doing amazing stuff. That after this, I'm going to partner with them on 2 other projects, inshallah, after this. But again, 88202110 is the till number that you can also donate. You don't, or you cannot plant trees. You don't have the time. You're abroad. I mean, you can always send them something on M-Pesa Kidogo, and they'll plant trees for you. If you want something specific, of course, you can always reach out to them on their contacts that's up there on the website. Hanifa, your parting shot tonight. Parting shot tonight.
Okay. Sorry?
What's your parting shot tonight? Unaambia nini watu buy tukienda?
Stop littering.
We
need to curb the bad culture of littering. It's very annoying when you eat something and then throw it outside the matatu. A grown person, you know. So stop littering, and let's do our best to take care of our environment as much as we complain, and hold our leaders accountable.
Wow.
And teach our children the good culture.
The climate change is real. I think that's my parting shot, that people need to know that climate change is a real thing, and plant more trees.
Sister Ewadosi.
Yeah, they can feel it. I think a lot of people have come to see.
Yeah, that's one is Ewadosi.
The logging ban, and then you want it.
So these are rich men problems. These are not our problems. Our problems is getting the next meal.
The rich men problems affect us.
Yes.
Actually,
the ones
the
suffering.
kids are the casualties. The kids are always the top casualties in this, you know, rich men problems.
Interesting.
So, yeah.
Once again, it's 88. I mean, your till number is lost. Yeah. 88202110. 88202110 is the till number for Jumbo Tree Limited. Let's take care of our environment.
Shilling, you can do so. 1 tree is 500 shilling. You can plant, you know, 10 trees, 1,000 trees, 500 trees. It's up to you.
As much as possible.
Yes.
Yes, guys, you had it for yourself. And Hanifa said, stop littering. Wacha kutupa takataka. One thing I'll add is that, Hanifa, you should tell us about your next cleanup, and people should turn up for those cleanup. I'll remind you what a very good friend of mine by the name Sheikh Jamaluddin Osman reminded me this morning. We had a long conversation, and he reminded me this morning. He told me, Akhi, in everything that you're doing, remember that on the day of judgment, you're going to be asked about 4 things. 1, your life. 2, how did you get your wealth and how did you spend it? Number 3, you're going to be asked about your knowledge. And number 4, you're going to be asked about how did you spend your youth. So imagine if you tell Allah that I planted 1,000 trees in my youthful years. Imagine that. So just 1,000 trees. How many birds may benefit from it? How many living creatures may benefit from it? Imagine if you just stand up and be part of the cleanup exercise and take care of the environment, and you tell Allah that, yeah, Allah, you created me and sent me on this earth as a Khalifa, and this is what I did. I took care of my environment. I held my leaders accountable. This is how I spent my life. Ya Rabb, because of that, admit me into your Jannah. Imagine that.